Hey there, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. If you're here to wind down, relax, or maybe drift off into a peaceful sleep, you're in exactly the right place. Go ahead and get comfortable. Maybe you're lying in bed. Maybe you're watching the stars out your window, or simply listening with your eyes closed. However you've arrived here, I'm glad you did. Tonight, we're going to begin a journey through time. A slow, wandering walk through dusty ruins, fading scrolls, forgotten names. In the quiet unraveling of one of the most influential empires the world has ever known. The Roman Empire, not the dramatic rise of Caesar, or the thrilling gladiatorial games of the Colosseum. No, this is the other story. The long, slow, gentle fading of power and prestige, of cities emptying out, trade routes quieting, and the rituals of a once great people growing dimmer with each generation. This is the very slow fall of Rome. Across this video, we'll step softly through the rhythms of everyday life. Meet forgotten figures who shaped moments big and small, uncover quiet cultural mysteries, and explore the contrasts between rich and poor, rulers and workers, city and countryside. No crashes, no climaxes, just a deep, immersive drift into the past. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to the channel so you can join me again on future sleepy journeys through history. Settle in, take a deep breath, and let's begin. Imagine yourself in a quiet Roman village in the early 5th century. The sky is a muted gray, blanketing the earth with a soft, cool hush. A breeze moves gently through olive trees, their silver-green leaves whispering with each stir. Birds call lazily in the distance, and in the damp soil of the garden behind a stone villa, a farmer kneels, tending to sprouting vegetables. It is morning. The kind that begins not with a loud call or clamor, but with the slow rhythm of breath and waking bodies. Small house perhaps, a domus, if its family is fortunate, is built of worn brick and clay, its walls faded with time. The plaster along the lower edges has chipped, revealing rough textures beneath. A dog stretches in the doorway. A child turns in bed. The matron of the house, dressed in a simple stola, rises before the sun is high. Her sandals make soft noises on the cold stone floor. She wraps a shawl over her shoulders and steps quietly into the courtyard, where a basin of rainwater reflects the morning light. She washes her hands, face, and arms into chilled water, her motions slow and deliberate. There is no rush. The rhythm of the day has not yet begun. The household wakes in stages. First the servants, if there are any, and then the older children, tasked with small duties: feeding chickens, bringing in kindling, sweeping the steps. Breakfast is plain and modest. A crust of coarse bread, perhaps softened and watered down, wine or olive oil, a few preserved olives, maybe a wedge of aged cheese from a goat kept behind the house. The air smells faintly of yeast and smoke, of drying herbs and packed earth. Beyond the household, the village begins to stir. A blacksmith opens his doors, revealing soot-stained walls and half-finished tools. He fans the coals of his forge, and the scent of hot metal begins to drift on the breeze. A cart rattles by, its wheels groaning, drawn by a tired-looking mule. The cart's owner waves to the baker, who is already at work in his shop, tending to loaves warming in a domed clay oven. Smoke rises from rooftops in thin, pale ribbons. There are fewer people here than there once were. This village, once bustling with Roman travelers and goods flowing from the cities, has grown quieter. The roads are not as well maintained. Trade has slowed. The empire's grasp is looser now, its attention pulled toward its own turmoil. But the villagers still live, still work, still follow this steady rhythm of survival. A school teacher walks slowly to his post near the Forum, a dusty, open space where notices are pinned and the elders gather to sit on benches. He carries a wax tablet under one arm and a worn stylus in his other hand. pupils will arrive soon. Boys from local families who can still afford a little education. They will learn basic Latin, some arithmetic, and recite moral sayings from rote memory. Nearby, the potter's apprentice prepares clay, turning it between his palms. His master leans over a wheel, guiding soft earth into forms that will harden in fire. Jugs, bowls, storage jars, humble things made more for use than decoration. The apprentice's hands are cracked and dry, his sleeves stained with dust, in the countryside beyond. Shepherds move slowly along hillside paths, their cloaks drawn close, staffs tapping the earth. Sheep bleat softly, a bell jangling now and then from the neck of a goat. The sky is low. Distant hills rise like sleeping animals, soft and undisturbed. Life is not fast here. Life is not loud. Even the children play quietly, chasing one another around the worn columns of a half-forgotten temple. Its carvings faded by wind and time. A statue of Minerva, broken at the shoulder, stands watchfully above them. At midday, a lull falls over the village. The sun reaches its highest point and seems to pause there. The fields are quiet. Labor slows. Men sit in shaded corners, sipping from shared cups. Women gather in twos and threes, spinning wool, gossiping in low voices, sometimes singing old songs that float on the still air. The market stalls are modest, now mostly goods from nearby lentils, dried figs, honey, wax, and a few dyed fabrics that have made their way inland over many weeks. Old soldiers, now farmers or guards, sit with backs against walls, their sandals dusty, their eyes far away. They speak little. They have seen much. Their armor, if kept, is stored deep in wooden trunks. Their tales, if told, are slow and short, and as the afternoon wears on, the village continues in this way. Quietly, slowly, the smoke from cook fires begins to rise again. Stews of lentils and onions bubble softly in terracotta pots. Bread is sliced, and children are called home with gentle voices. The rhythm of the day begins to ease in the distance from a nearby villa that overlooks the valley. A landowner writes in a scroll, recording accounts or notes in fine, neat Latin. His walls are still adorned with mosaics, though the edges have begun to crack. His slaves move about in practiced silence. His family dines together, surrounded by fading wealth and echoes of a once unquestioned supremacy. And so, the day fades. The last light leans across stone and field. Oil lamps are lit. The village grows quiet again, returning to sleep with the same patience it woke with. This is the world of a Rome that is not yet gone, but no longer great. A Rome that drifts, almost imperceptibly, into the soft hands of time. The fall is not a moment. It is a mood, a slow sigh of history. And now, with this glimpse into daily life, we turn toward the next part of our story, the people whose lives reflected the tides of change more than most. From generals to bureaucrats, rebels to forgotten reformers, we'll meet them one at a time as the sun rises again. As we drift further into the rhythms of fading Roman daily life, we find ourselves in the city, not the grand metropolises of Rome or Constantinople, but in one of the smaller provincial cities. Perhaps somewhere in Gaul or along the Dalmatian coast, where Latin mixes gently with local dialects, and the architecture speaks in a quiet chorus of marble columns and patched timber. These towns remain important, but they are slower now. Their forms, once vibrant with speeches and trade, feel subdued. Moss grows between the paving stones. Statues where faces softened by rain. The sounds here are not absent, but muted boots over stone, the creak of wooden carts, the low murmur of passers-by. A public bathhouse still functions, though its marble is chipped, and the hypocaust no longer keeps the caldarium as warm as it once did. Step inside, and the air is humid and fragrant with herbs, rosemary, laurel, and occasionally imported oils. Men and women bathe separately, tending to routines passed down through generations. Scraping skin clean with a strigil, sitting beneath arched ceilings, talking softly in the steam. In the adjoining room, older citizens read scrolls aloud to one another. News arrives slowly now, letters from the east, scribbled proclamations posted on walls, gossip passed along trade routes, military defeat here, a new bishop appointed there, the emperor ill, grain prices rising. The empire no longer feels invincible, but its presence still echoes in the marble benches and Latin inscriptions. We follow a shopkeeper next, whose wares are modest dyed fabrics, small bronze charms, pins for hair, ceramic oil lamps. Her fingers are worn and careful, her scales balanced with smooth stones. She speaks to her customers with familiarity. Many are neighbors. Transactions are small, but every coin counts. The economy has grown unpredictable. Inflation is a quiet threat. Her shop once imported goods from across the empire, glassware from Syria, spices from Egypt, fine linen from Alexandria, but those shipments arrive less frequently now. She relies more and more on local artisans, sometimes barters instead of selling. The streets around her bend in old Roman fashion, guided by the grid, but altered by time. Ivy clings to older walls, and birds nest in the cracks of once grand arches. Municipal buildings show where few have been repurposed, and the old temple is now a granary. A disused basilica hosts council meetings. A few streets over, a cobbler works quietly. His tools are few, but well kept. He repairs sandals, boots, and riding shoes with the same meticulous care. A painted bust of Mercury sits on a shelf, watching over him. He lights a candle at its base each morning, a habit, not a belief. Faith is changing. Christianity now shapes much of the public world, but old customs remain in gestures, in murmured phrases, in the quiet honoring of household gods. In the tenement block, sense of life is different. The buildings rise several stories, often crowded and poorly maintained. Wooden stairways groan beneath the weight of daily traffic. Water must be fetched. Fires for cooking are watched closely. A pot overboiled can mean danger. Neighbors know one another's routines. Privacy is a luxury few can afford. The scent of food lingers in narrow hallways. Lentil porridge, onions stewing in oil, flatbread warming on hot stones. Children laugh and chase one another in the stairwells. An elderly man sits on a step, watching the world move slowly around him. He has lived here for decades. His voice is raspy, but he knows the stories of this building, every family that's passed through. In the early evening, candles begin to glow behind the shutters. The sounds shift, less commerce, more conversation. Fathers return from workshops, mothers from market stalls. Elders share quiet recollections, lessons told not with authority, but with the gentle patience of time. Meanwhile, religion increasingly shapes the town's calendar. The bishop, a calm presence in worn robes, holds sermons in the repurposed basilica. His Latin is soft and deliberate. He speaks of virtue, patience, and the trials of this world. Behind him, a faded fresco shows scenes of martyrdom and salvation. Congregants gather, nodding slowly, offering one another peace. Outside, an old woman lights a small oil lamp at a street shrine. The carved figure it honors is almost unrecognizable now, the nose worn away, the hands broken. Still, she bows her head, whispers a prayer she learned as a child, and continues her walk home. Evening draws the city into quiet. The air cools, market stalls are packed away. The sky turns to deep blue. Dogs bark softly in the distance, and cats prowl along garden walls. Life is slowing again. Curtains are drawn. doors closed. Lanterns flicker, and so it continues, day by day, life by life. A Rome that is not yet dead, only quieter, weaker, changing. Let us now move gently beyond the cities and towns and into the countryside, where Rome's slow fading feels even more like a long exhale. Here, amid fields and groves, the patterns of life have changed very little for centuries. Signed, plod, in time-worn furrows. The smell of tilled soil hangs thick in the morning air. Stone farmhouses sit at the heart of each estate, low and rectangular, surrounded by sheds, livestock, stay, and orchards. The Villa Rustica was once the center of economic and agricultural life. Its own still operate that were run by landowners who have retreated from the instability of cities, managing their holdings with scribes and foremen. Others have crumbled or been sold in pieces. Tenants and freedmen now till much of the land. Slavery has not disappeared, but it is evolving. Fewer new slaves arrive, and more workers are tied to land by debt or tradition rather than chains. In the vineyards, laborers pruned grapevines carefully, following rhythms shaped by the sun and season. In spring, the earth is damp and fragrant. In autumn, it is heavy with the scent of crushed grapes and fermenting must. These are the smells of sustenance, of commerce, of ritual. The festivals of the harvest continue muted now, less adorned, but still observed. You can almost hear the soft clink of amphorae being filled and sealed with wax. Nearby, in the olive groves, workers knock fruit from trees with long poles, collecting them in woven baskets. A small press groans as it turns the fruit into thick, green gold oil. That oil is precious, used for cooking, for lighting lamps, for offerings, for medicine. A shepherd leans against a dry stone wall, his flock grazing around him. His tunic is sun-bleached, and his hands bear the marks of many seasons. He hums a tune he does not know the words to, any more just the melody, passed down. At his feet, a young dog watches, ears alert. The hills stretch out behind him in quiet, green folds. Life here is steady, but not easy. Drought or blight can destroy a year's work. Bandits, once rare, are more common in certain regions, now especially where garrisons have thinned. A messenger from the villa arrives at the edge of the field. He carries a note with the seal of the landowner, perhaps concerning taxes, yields, or the visit of a distant official, and so, even in the fields, the reach of Rome is felt. Its bureaucracy lingers, like faded ink on a scroll. Back at the villa, the matriarch oversees the weaving of wool. Creaks slowly. Girls sit beside her, learning through repetition. Height. Their fingers move steadily, passing thread through thread, row by row. Their conversation is low and patient. They speak of weather, of market days, of rumors from the town. The household shrines are tended with care. Offerings of fruit or oil are left beside statues of household gods. Cracked figurine of Vesta watches from a niche above the hearth. The family prays together before the evening meal, their words blending old invocations with newer Christian phrasing. The meal itself is simple. Lentils stewed with herbs, coarse bread baked that morning, occasionally a bit of pork or smoked fish. Jugs of watered wine pass from hand to hand. The children eat first, then the elders, then the workers and guests. Conversation is measured. The day's work is recounted. Plans for the next morning are quietly discussed. Outside, servant draws water from a well, the bucket creaking as it rises. A boy feeds the chickens. Lamps are lit in each room, casting amber light across faded frescoes and mosaic floors. This villa, like many, carries echoes of past splendor. The atrium has lost its shine. The marble is cracked. A garden fountain sputters instead of flowing. But still, there is a sense of permanence, like stone refusing to forget its shape. Across the empire, in hundreds of such villas and farms, Life moves forward in slow, familiar beats. There are no sweeping changes, no alarms, small adjustments. A new priest, a different tax collector. A boy sent to the city to apprentice with a scribe. A daughter wed to a neighbor's son, even as Rome's borders fray. Even as officials squabble and armies desert, these rhythms endure. For most, the world has not ended. It has simply shifted, like the gentle tilt of the earth between seasons. And as we leave this quiet countryside behind, we prepare to step into the lives of those who lived not in fields or alleys, but in courtrooms, palaces, and council chambers. Those who gave orders, brokered treaties, raised armies, and sometimes watched them fall. Let the pace remain slow. Let the breath remain steady. We are not rushing. We are remembering. As we conclude our slow journey through daily life in the waning days of the Western Roman Empire, we pause in a place where many of these lives converge. The road, Roman roads. Once marvels of engineering and emblems of empire, still stretch across the landscape like old scars. They are quieter now. The armies that once marched upon them, boots in perfect cadence, are fewer. The merchant caravans, once bustling and bright with goods from across the world, arrive less often. But the roads remain stone fitted to stone, undisturbed by centuries. Imagine yourself walking along one such road, perhaps near the coast of Hispania, or winding through the hill country of northern Italy. The air is cool. The sun filters through tall cypress and gnarled olive trees. At Casa, the road underfoot is worn smooth, its ruts carved by countless wheels. To the left, a milestone stands, weathered and leaning slightly. The Latin inscription has begun to fade, but the authority of it still lingers. A name of an emperor, a number of miles to the next city. A lone traveler passes. He wears a wool cloak and carries a walking staff. His tunic is patched but clean. At his side, a satchel filled with hard bread, dried figs, and perhaps a small scroll case wrapped in oiled cloth. He walks not with haste, but with purpose. Maybe he is a messenger from a local estate, perhaps a monk in search of a library, or simply a man returning home. Farther down the road, a mule-drawn cart approaches slowly, its wheels creaking, loaded with sacks of grain bound for a provincial town. The driver nods to passing travelers. They exchange few words. Each is absorbed in thought, in distance, in the soft rhythm of footsteps and hooves on stone. At intervals, way stations still operate. These are simpler now, often run by local families, rather than imperial administrators. A rest for the night means bread, goat cheese, and cool water from a well. There may be a fire in the hearth, a dog curled beneath a bench, the scent of rosemary and old wood smoke in the rafters. Walls are adorned with small charms, protective symbols, a cross carved with a practiced hand, a worn laurel wreath. The past and present mingle here in the most ordinary of ways. From the roadside, a villa looms in the distance, its perimeter marked by crumbling stone. A farmer repairs a gate. A pair of children play in the dust, using pebbles to mark a game older than memory. A woman walks from a garden, arms filled with leeks and herbs. She glances at the road, at the travelers passing by, then disappears behind a wooden door. Even funerary monuments still stand along the roads. Here lies Gaius, a centurion. There, Flavia, mother of 3. These stones are ancient now, overgrown with ivy and lichen. The carved Latin is eroding, but if you run your fingers over the letters, you can feel their story. It's not the grandeur of emperors, but the quiet pride of ordinary lives. Evening comes, and the road begins to glow in the soft orange of sunset. The light stretches across the paving stones like silk. Cicadas hum in the tall grass. A pair of monks walk in silence, sandals brushing dust. One carries a satchel of scrolls, the other a small wooden cross. They do not speak, but their presence is a comfort. A reminder that even as empires shift, belief endures. A farmer leading his oxen home raises a hand in greeting. His cart is empty now, the day's goods sold at market. He hums as he walks, a tune passed from his grandfather. The ox's bell rings softly with each step. In the distance, smoke rises from hearths. Supper is being made, lamps lit, doors closed. By night, the road is quiet again. Only the stars watch it now. The occasional flicker of a lantern in the distance suggests another traveler making slow, careful progress through the dark. Somewhere, a night watchman in a small town strikes his staff gently on the cobbles, calling out the hour in a language that mixes Latin with something older, something local. It is this road, and roads like it, that carried Rome outward. And it is these roads that now carry the slow unraveling inward. Not in chaos or collapse, but in the quiet dispersal of attention, influence, control. And yet, they endure, like the people, like the rhythm of their days. We have walked with them now in their homes and shops, in their fields and markets, in their silence and labor. In the next segment, we shift our gaze from daily life to individual lives. We begin to meet the names, some known, some forgotten, who moved within this fading world. Ambitious generals, nervous governors, thoughtful monks, distant emperors. Let the road fall behind us now. Let the journey inward begin. Let us now turn toward the people who moved often quietly, often reluctantly, through the twilight of Rome. We begin not with a famous emperor or grand general, but with a name that echoed more loudly in his own time than in ours. CHL. Imagine Stilicho, not on a battlefield, but alone in his study late at night. A single oil lamp flickers, casting shadows on scrolls and maps. His cloak is folded beside him. His sword rests on a wooden stand, close at hand, but unused. The room smells of parchment and wax. Outside, the muffled voices of guards drift in from the corridor. It is the year 45A, and the frontiers of the empire are trembling. Flavius Stilicho was a man of two worlds of Roman duty and barbarian blood. His father was a Vandal, his mother Roman. He rose to the military ranks with precision and caution, earning the trust of the Emperor Theodosius I after Theodosius's death. Stilicho became guardian to his young son, Honorius, and effectively ruled the Western Roman Empire from behind the throne. But ruling in name and in practice were very different things. At the start of Stilicho's career, the Roman world still believed in its own permanence. The cities remained intact. Legions still marched. Taxes were still collected. Yet in the background, pressures mounted. Tribes pushed at borders. Generals jostled for influence. The Eastern and Western empires grew distant. Stilicho's genius lay in his ability to hold things together. He did not rebuild Rome. He did not conquer new lands. He managed to climb with quiet intensity, negotiating with enemies when he could, suppressing revolts when he must. He was, in many ways, a man built for stalling collapse in 401. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, crossed the Alps. Panic rippled through the western provinces. Stilicho met them in battle near Pollentia in 402. The fighting was fierce, but indecisive. Yet Alaric withdrew, and Rome was safe for the time being. Stilicho was hailed as a savior. He was not celebrated with triumphs or monuments. Instead, he received something both more and less enduring: political envy. Senators whispered. Court rivals sharpened their knives. Stilicho's marriage to Serena, a niece of Theodosius, offered him a seat near the throne, but not protection from resentment. He returned again and again to the Danube frontier, trying to shore up defenses with diplomacy and force. He knew Rome could not afford constant war. He paid some tribes to stay put. He conscripted others into the army. Each year, he juggled more pieces. Each year, the cracks grew wider. Honorius, still young and increasingly paranoid, maintained a distant presence in Ravenna, surrounded by advisors who mistrusted Stilicho's mixed heritage and vast influence. The court became a nest of intrigue. Letters were intercepted. Rumors spread. By 408, Stilicho's political enemies had gained the upper hand. Accusations mounted. Treason, collusion, with Alaric betrayal of Roman interests. Whether or not they were true mattered little. The emperor ordered Stilicho's arrest. Loyal soldiers hesitated, but the command stood. In the summer of 408, Stilicho was executed. His fall was not marked by rebellion or riot. It was quiet, sudden, inevitable. His death sent a shock through the empire's spine. Officers who had once served under him were killed. His son, Eucharius, was murdered. His alliances collapsed. His careful strategies unraveled. Months later, Alaric returned. Stilicho's life was a portrait in restraint. He held the fabric of empire together, not through brilliance or charisma, but through persistence. He bought time, not forever, but longer than most could have. And when he was gone, the unraveling quickened. You can imagine his study, long after his death. The maps curled with age. The ink faded. The quiet hum of wind through the stone corridors. No one speaks his name there now, but once he held the frontier in his hands. Let us pause a moment in that stillness, and now we move on. Another figure, another flickering light in the dusk of empire. Let us now visit the city of Hippo Regius on the North African coast, where another kind of Roman legacy was being written, not with swords or scrolls, but with words that reached far beyond walls and borders. The city of Hippo Regius rests along the northern coast of Africa, nestled near the sea. In the early 5th century, streets were warm with dust, and its walls echoed with both the cadence of Latin and the hum of Berber tongues. Ships came and went from its harbor, and olive presses worked slowly in the hills beyond. Within its walls lived one of the most quietly influential figures of the age, Augustine of Hippo. He was not born to greatness, nor raised in privilege. His mother, Monica, was a devout Christian. His father, a pagan official. Augustine was drawn to ideas, early restless in spirit and sharp in intellect. He studied rhetoric in Carthage, dabbled in philosophies, traveled to Milan, and flirted with various schools of thought. He sought truth, then pleasure, then position. But like the empire around him, Augustine shifted slowly. His conversion to Christianity in the year 386 was not sudden. It was a tide coming in, quietly, relentlessly. He was baptized in Milan by Ambrose, another bishop of growing fame. In time, Augustine returned to Africa, and in 395, he became Bishop of Hippo. His world was not Rome's anymore, not one of marble courts and imperial ceremony, but one of quiet congregations, coastal debates, and letters sent across the weary provinces. He wrote constantly, his words shaped by candlelight, in silence. His most famous works, Confessions and the City of God, would outlive the buildings where they were written. Imagine him in his studio, modest room in the bishop's residence. Wooden shelves bowed under scrolls, a table cluttered with ink, wax tablets, and rough parchment. The wind from the sea presses at the shutters. Augustine writes slowly, steadily, his thoughts winding through prayer, philosophy, and pastoral care. His pen scratches as a servant brings in wine and bread. He was not immune to the chaos of the times. In 410 word reached Hippo that Rome itself had been sacked by the Visigoths. For a moment, the world held its breath. Augustine responded, not with fear, but with reflection. He began work on the city of God, sprawling defense of Christian hope against the collapse of earthly power. His message was not dramatic. It was measured, thoughtful. Earthly cities rise and fall, he wrote, but the city of God endures. Power is fleeting. Faith is not. His writings soothed the anxieties of the faithful and reshaped how many thought of history, its purpose, and salvation. Beyond writing, Augustine served his people. He settled disputes, counseled the grieving, baptized the young. His voice echoed in the basilica each week, patient and persistent. He debated heresies not with shouts, but with arguments. He corrected, instructed, urged in the final years of his life. Augustine watched from his study as the Vandals approached North Africa. In 430, they reached Hippo. The city was besieged. Augustine, already old and unwell, remained. He did not flee. He did not resist with arms. Instead, he prayed, he wrote, he prepared. He died during the siege, quietly, at home. When the Vandals entered the city, they spared his library. His writings had already spread far beyond Hippo, through copies and messengers, monks and bishops. His words reached lands he never saw. While cities burned and leaders fell, Augustine's voice endured calm, reasoned, reflective. He was not a general, not a ruler. He wielded no sword. And yet, his influence stretched across centuries, even as the world around him shifted. Even as Rome receded, Augustine left behind a map not of roads, but of thought, of how to live in a world that feels uncertain, how to remain rooted when everything else shakes. Let us pause a moment there, in his quiet room. The light dim, the scrolls stacked, the sea breathing in the distance. In our next journey, we step briefly into the world of emperors once more. Men whose titles rang with old power, even as their reach grew shorter. And among them, one in particular, a figure often overlooked, but whose reign captured the contradictions of the age, Majorian. Let us now turn our attention to the short and cautious flame of an emperor, one whose ambition stood briefly against the long twilight of Rome. His name was Majorian. The year is 457. The Western Roman Empire is in retreat. Provinces lost. Armies thin. The economy fraying. Yet, in this fragile moment, a soldier emperor rises, determined to restore something of what had been. Majorian did not inherit the throne. He earned it through military skill, administrative acumen, and the backing of Rismer, the powerful general and kingmaker behind the scenes. Even so, Majorian was no puppet. From the moment he was elevated to the purple, he worked not for glory, but for restoration. Imagine him in a marble hall in Ravenna, surrounded by scrolls, advisors, and the creased maps of a once vast realm. His robes are fine but modest. His eyes are tired but focused. Each morning begins with letters, directives to tax collectors, orders for repairs, plans for rebuilding. He's not dreaming of new conquests. He is trying to hold on to what is left. Majorian's reforms came quickly. He reduced corruption in the courts. He attempted to control the power of the landed aristocracy. He enacted laws protecting the remnants of Rome's peasantry, those bound to land, those taxed beyond reason, those with little voice left in the system. He revived interest in the Roman army, not just as a tool of suppression, but as a professional force. He sought to recruit, train, and pay troops with purpose. He rebuilt discipline, and he looked outward to what could still be recovered. His sights turned to Gaul and Hispania. There, local leaders ruled in Rome's name but paid little heed to the emperor's commands. Majorian led campaigns to reassert control. He was not ruthless, but he was effective. Cities capitulated, treaties were signed, roads were cleared. Then came his most daring idea, a naval campaign to retake North Africa from the Vandals. It was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious. He gathered a fleet at Carthago Nova in Spain. Months of planning, provisioning, and diplomacy followed, but before the fleet could launch, it was destroyed, sabotaged, likely with the support of Vandal agents. The loss was devastating. Majorian returned to Italy, diminished but not broken. He continued to govern, to legislate, to build. He toured cities in person. He listened to petitions. He walked among soldiers and scribes. His presence was quiet but committed. But Rome especially, the Rome of this era, was unkind to reformers. Rismer, the very man who had supported his rise, grew uneasy. Majorian had become too independent, too capable, too unwilling to play them part of a ceremonial ruler. In the summer of 461, while en route to Rome, Majorian was arrested, his bodyguards disbanded, his friends dismissed, and within days he was executed quietly, without trial. His reign ended after just 4 years. He was not the last emperor, but he was among the last who tried to govern in the old Roman way, with vision, law, and duty. Others would follow lesser men, chosen for convenience, dismissed at whim. Majorian left behind no dynasty, no grand tomb, no sweeping victories. But in his short reign, he offered something rare, a glimpse of what Rome might still have been, if only it had a little more time. His laws were copied and preserved. His name spoken with a kind of weary reverence by later chroniclers. He became a symbol not of decline, but of resistance to it. In this, he stands with the others we have. Met Stilicho, holding back the flood. Augustine, riding hope into the void. Majorian, trying to mend the crumbling stone. Let us leave his story there, neath the quiet trees of Ravenna, where his memory lingers like a whisper. Next, we'll meet a figure even less known, Gala, Placidia, daughter of an emperor, sister to one, mother to another. A woman who moved through courts, sieges, marriages, and monasteries. Her life spans the fall like a bridge, a thread of continuity amid collapse. In the stillness of the earth lie the secrets of Rome's slow undoing, not written in grand edicts or royal decrees, but in the quiet artifacts left behind in heartstones. Broken pottery, abandoned villas, and collapsed aqueducts. Archaeology tells the story of decline, not as a single moment, but as a gradual erosion. Let us walk slowly through these layers. We begin with the countryside, where Rome once spread, villas like constellations across the provinces. In Gaul, in Britannia, in northern Italy, these country estates dotted the land hubs of agricultural production, wealth, and rural administration. Their mosaics once shimmered with myth and pattern. Columns rose beside courtyards. Paths steamed in the cold mornings, but slowly they change. The first signs are subtle. Bathhouse wing, repurposed for grain storage. Fine, imported wares replaced with rougher local pottery. In one villa in southern Britain, archaeologists found a mosaic covered not by collapse, but by an orderly layer of packed earth, suggesting not a ruinous end, but deliberate abandonment. Roof tiles reused. Bronze. Fixtures pried loose. Statues toppled and carted off, not by invaders, but by locals repurposing them for new buildings. The rhythms of elite life fade, replaced by subsistence and necessity. In towns, too, the story is not always dramatic. Farm areas were gradually left open to grazing animals. Curbstones went unrepaired, inscriptions faded, and were never replaced. Workshops, once confined to the outskirts, moved into former temples and basilicas. Life did not vanish. It rearranged itself across the empire, amphorae, telltales. These clay vessels, once used to transport wine, oil, and grain, were everywhere stacked in warehouses, buried in garbage heaps, shattered in riverbeds. In the 3rd and 4th centuries, they bear the stamps of North Africa, Egypt, the Eastern Mediterranean, but over time, the diversity narrows. The flow of goods constricts. By the late 5th century, amphorae become local, rough, plain. A village in Spain might once have dined on olive oil from Carthage. Now it presses its own. Coinage offers another layer. Mints once struck coins with imperial likenesses, clear inscriptions, and consistent weights. But as central control wanes, coins grow smaller, cruder. In some regions, they vanish almost entirely, replaced by barter or informal local tokens. In one site in Germania, a burial from the early 5th century contains no coins, just tools, worn clothing, fasteners, and a ceramic bowl. A teat picks up simplicity of changed economic habits of a world less connected. In the Mediterranean, harbors once echoed with trade. Now, they're silting up marks more than neglect. It tells of reduced traffic, fewer ships, decline in state-funded dredging. Fishhooks and weights are still found people, still lived, but the global reach shrinks. One of the most haunting images from this period comes from the old Roman roads, built to endure, caved with stone and carefully surveyed. These roads once stretched from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. Legions marched them. Merchants counted milestones. Messages crossed the empire with surprising speed. But by the late empire, maintenance lagged. Bridges collapsed and were not rebuilt. In some places, locals turned to older pre-Roman paths. In others, carts carved deep ruts into unmaintained pavement. At one crossing in central Italy, archaeologists found that a Roman milestone had been knocked over and repurposed as the foundation for a medieval sheep enclosure. The empire's legacy, literally buried to support new, smaller needs, and cemeteries too. The story is nuanced. Burial customs change. Once grand family tombs are left empty, their stones scattered. Simpler inhumations graves dug close to churches or shrines become the norm. Grave goods decline. Yet, even here, continuity whispers. A brooch of Roman style, dated a century after the supposed fall. A Christian symbol carved next to a pagan one. Old beliefs fading slowly, never vanishing in a single breath. The material world tells us that Rome did not fall like a toppled statue. It slowly, unevenly receded. In some places, life hardly changed at first. In others, the shift was sharper. But overall, the physical remains show adaptation, not sudden collapse. In the next part, we'll visit specific archaeological sites, frozen moments in the slow unraveling. The cities, villas, and sanctuaries where the fabric of Roman life is still visible if we look with patient eyes. We now walk, slowly and quietly, through the spaces Rome left behind, its once vibrant cities and dignified estates, now preserved in fragments. These are not places of conquest or battle. They are places of endurance, of transformation, of quiet decay. Our first stop is the city of Pompeii, not for the famous eruption of Vesuvius in 79 CE, but because it offers a freeze frame of earlier Roman life, helping us understand what slowly changed elsewhere. In Pompeii, life halted abruptly. Shops stand mid-transaction. Bread lies preserved in ovens. The frescoes on walls, the graffiti on corners. The worn thresholds, these show us a Rome still pulsing with urban rhythm. Now shift centuries forward to the city of Trier in modern-day Germany. Once Augusta Trevarium, it stood as a major administrative center. Its basilica still stands, massive, austere, red bricked, originally a throne hall for the Western emperors. Today, it is a church. But its Roman origin is clear. Archaeologists found layers here. Imperial buildings converted to bishops' residences. Bathhouses transformed into grain stores. Ornate villas divided into humbler homes. Trier did not fall. It faded, slowly reshaped by changing needs. Ravenna, too, tells a tale of transition. Set in the marshlands of northern Italy, it became the capital of the Western Empire in its twilight. Its churches, San Vitale, Santa Palanier, hold mosaics not of senators or generals, but of Christ, martyrs, and saints. These shimmering images reflect Rome's shift toward Christianity. Beneath Ravenna, archaeologists discovered sewer systems still intact, coins dropped in the soil, bits of ceramic from family meals, everyday items persisting even as emperors changed. In North Africa, at the site of Thamagadi modern Timgad in Algeria, we find another frozen world. A Roman colonial town built in a grid pattern with colonnaded streets, a forum, libraries. As the centuries passed, sand slowly buried the town. It was not destroyed by invasion. It was forgotten, lost beneath the desert. Excavations reveal late layers of habitation, walls repaired with rubble, doorways sealed to create smaller, warmer spaces. Signs that people adapted, held on, restructured their lives in the face of instability. Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain, longer frontier of the empire, offers another view. Built to mark Rome's limits, its forts once bustled with soldiers, traders, and families. Over time, garrisons shrank, supply lines thinned. Forts were reused by locals for shelter, their stones repurposed into cottages and barns. In one fort, Vindolanda, tablets were found, thin slivers of wood with inked letters from the early 2nd century. Personal messages, requests for socks, invitations to birthday parties, inventories of grain. But later, layers show less writing. Literacy ebbed as educational networks frayed in Gaul. The city of Lugdunum, now lying, continued into late antiquity, but its grandeur waned. Public buildings were not rebuilt after earthquakes. Aqueducts failed. People moved uphill, closer to the bishop's complex. The urban center shrank, but did not vanish. In southern France, the villa at Chiragan, once resplendent with statuary, became a workshop. Beautiful marble sculptures were found buried, unfinished, or abandoned art left behind in haste, or forgotten as tastes and priorities shifted. The temple at Abu Mina in Egypt, a Christian pilgrimage site, shows another side. It rose in the late Roman period as Christian worship became dominant. Pilgrims came seeking healing, water from sacred wells, and tokens of faith. But when the water table dropped, the site began to sink. Today, salt slowly eats away at the bricks, echoing the decline of the institutions that once built it. Even in Rome itself, the city center evolved, deformed, once the beating heart of civic life became quieter. Statues fell, law courts moved, churches grew up in the ruins. Pilgrims came not to honor senators, but saints. In the Palatine Hill palaces, trees grew where courtiers once walked. Marble was stripped from imperial walls to decorate medieval churches. Yet, traces endure, fragments of fresco, faint inscriptions, buried coins. Through these sites, the message is the same. Change, not collapse. Stones repurposed, rooms divided, spaces adapted. A candle burned in a corner where once an emperor sat. A shrine rose where a statue fell. The archaeology of Rome's fall is not one of fire and ruin. It is of rearrangement, of slow surrender, of life continuing in altered form.